Too many words. Thank you, David. You always make us laugh, and I appreciate that. So thank you to everyone who has chosen to be part of this spiritual community today. We know you have a choice, and we're grateful that you chose to be here with us. Today we begin a new month with a new theme, as you heard earlier, radiating the light of consciousness. Dr. Holmes wrote a number of times about light and consciousness being a lot like electricity, always present, ever available, even if we don't have an awareness of it, or the capability or the capacity to use it. In The Science of Mind on page 71, he wrote, "Electricity was a reality in the universe when Moses led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But neither Moses nor any of his followers knew anything about it. This is true of all natural laws. They have always existed, but only when understood may they be used. In this way, life waits upon our discovery of natural laws, our discovery of ourselves, and our discovery of our relationship with the whole." I was trying to figure out why he had such a thing about electricity. And then I remembered he was writing in the 1920s and 1930s, and electrification was still a snazzy new thing. It's so commonplace now that we don't even think about it until the power goes out. We think we know what electricity is. We think we know how it works. We think we know how to use it. But really, do we? In part, the shorthand of our language, the words that we use, gets in our way. I mean, turn on the light, flip the switch, plug it in. What are we doing? We're not creating electricity by doing that. We're just employing it. We're using something that's pre-existing. And if the electricity wasn't already available in the wires behind the walls, we could flip switches all day long and nothing would happen. We complete the circuit and the energy flows, the electricity flows. I remember back when I lived in Houston and we had a hurricane and big deal, and the power was out for 4 days. I can't tell you how many times I walked into a room, the power's out, right? There is no power. And I walked into a room and I flipped the switch and waited for something to happen. It's like, I can't make it happen by flipping the switch. There has to be a circuit working behind the scene that I engage with. And in this relationship that we have with consciousness, the circuit is always present. The circuit is always available. We just have to connect to it and engage with it to make it work. And I was thinking about, Christmas lights and Hanukkah lights and all this season of lighting up our world with these tangle of lights that are in the box in the attic or in the spare room. And we know that if we have a break in those wires, we're not going to get light. So we've got to find all the breaks. We've got to clear all the lines out. We've got to make solid connections or the electricity won't flow. And the same is true with consciousness. It's always there. It's always available. And sometimes there's a break in the line or something. And in terms of consciousness, it could be a belief or an old story or something like that that gets in the way of the flow. In The Heart Aroused, poet and writer David Whyte told a story of a young woman who had spent 43 years as a Poor Clare. Poor Clares are a religious order that lived in complete silent contemplation, never talking, no reason, no why, no how, no way, silence. Can you imagine living for 2+ decades of your life in complete silent contemplation, never speaking? It's beyond me. But after 23 years, she heard a voice in her head inside of her, telling her to go out and work in the world and to work on behalf of others. And when David White met her, she was working as a cook in a convent where he was co-leading a retreat for a bunch of exhausted, burnt out missionaries. He wrote that the missionaries were burnt out because they had been working nonstop for years, trying to fix something that was wrong in a world that needed to be fixed. It's no wonder they were burnt out, right? They weren't plugged in. They were working from their own energy systems rather than connecting to some greater truth. David called this woman, this cook, a youthful hidden saint. She served the guests at the convent because everything was right in her world, and she wanted others to experience it that way too. He also wrote that this woman would never burn out, no matter how much she applied herself to her outer world. She had an inexhaustible inner light that would endure through the direst of circumstances. She was plugged in to that light of consciousness. And her focused practice of 23 years meant she wasn't likely to get confused about the source of her light, the light, and its ready availability to her. We're getting a lot of practice staying connected to our light these days. And some days it's easier than others, right? This reminded me of a quote from Albert Camus from his book, The Stranger. I hadn't actually heard the whole quote in a very long time. But he wrote, "My dear, in the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there is something stronger, something better, pushing right back." So how do we stay connected to this invincible summer and not impede this divine flow through us? It's super easy to impede the flow. Happened yesterday. We might overhear a conversation or engage in one, get caught in one that pulls us right back down in the weeds, that disrupts our experience of our connection with the light. Invincible calm, invincible peace, invincible love, that feeling that we all had when David was playing that beautiful song. Finding our way back to that feeling, that experience of invincible calm, invincible peace, invincible love. Back when I was in foundations the first time, way back when, one of the questions that's in the curriculum is, how much of the day do you think you are fully conscious? Well, all of us were like, you know, pretty proud of ourselves being in foundations and all. And I had a sneaky suspicion it was a trick question. So I didn't answer first. I waited till everybody had gone before me. And I underguessed what I thought a good answer would be. And I said, oh, 50%. Most everybody else had guessed quite a bit higher than me. So I felt, reasonably confident about my answer. And Reverend Donald said, pay attention this week to how often you are fully conscious. And we'll talk about this again next week. So next week came, and all of us came back to class, and he asked the question again. And all of us kind of, hung our heads a little bit, and our new answers were, closer to 5 or 10%, maybe 15 on a good day. What does it take for us to remember that we are already inherently expressions of the divine? God shows up as us in form all the time? The short answer is practice, 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 right? And not wasting one microsecond demeaning, doubting, diminishing, shaming, blaming ourselves when we fail. We just stop and regroup and try again. In yesterday's morning practice, I read an affirmation from Dr. Daniel Lee Morgan's book, Guidance for a Spiritual Journey. He wrote, I am certain this day that God is incarnated in me, through me, as me. I know that it is one thing to believe that God is my life, and another thing to live as though this great thought were really true. I come to the place where I have complete reliance on the divine spirit. To this end, I use my daily affirmations as a conduit to bring me cheek to cheek, eyeball to eyeball, and face to face with divinity. I develop a deep realization that I am already the silent partner to God. And then Dr. Daniel had a quote in his daily reading from philosopher William James, who's the father of New Thought psychology or positive psychology. The philosophy which is so important in each of us is not a technical matter. It is our individual way of just seeing and feeling the total push and pressure of the cosmos, pushing us to connection, pushing us to embodiment. So I want to close with a couple of quotes, two of which I was very surprised are not actually quotes from who we thought they were, but whatever. The first one, on Mother Teresa's website, this is listed as a quote that she didn't actually say, but it's kind of sort of like stuff she did say. So they kind of sort of allow it to be kind of sort of like something she would have said. And you know this one. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. The second quote, this one bummed me out, was attributed to Piglet and supposedly was in one of A. Milne's books, but truthfully wasn't in there. Piglet noticed that even though he had a very small heart, it could hold a rather large amount of gratitude. So even though these are, well, I'll call them internet doubles, quotes that are not really quotes, but still it's good, valuable, useful information that we can take and apply and help us stay on track towards living this full embodied life. And then Ernest Holmes from Science of Mind, page 41 and 42. We have made a riddle out of simplicity. Therefore, we have not interpreted the light of love running through all life. To return to a sane simplicity is one of the first and most important things to do. All beings receive some light, and that light is always the same light. There is one nature diffused throughout all nature, one God incarnated in all people. The divine incarnation is inherent in our nature. We are immersed in an infinite knowingness. The question is, and the question remains, how much of this reality are we going to express in our lives? And then lastly, a quote from an author, Kent Nerburn, from a little book called Small Graces. We must learn to see with other eyes. The world contains many paths, some exalted, some mundane. It is not our task to judge the worthiness of our path. It is our task to walk our path with worthiness. We have been blinded by the bright light of heroes and saints. We must learn to trust the small light we have been given and to value the light that we can shed into the lives of those around us. Whatever your path is, whether it's big or little, great or small, there is no big or little in divine mind. It's just what it is. Walk your path to the best of your ability. Figure out how to be okay with your ability and know that it's not a fixed thing. It changes from day to day, sometimes minute to minute. Shine your radiant light and do your best not to judge anybody else. You can't possibly know what they're working with. Do this to the best of your ability. Bless yourself and bless us all. Thank you. So now I'm going to roll into the prayer. Grab a hold of your idea of your central self, your divine light that expresses as you in your life. Grab a hold of that and fan those flames. Imagine that big, beautiful, bold expression of God that you are, minute to minute, as it changes, because it does, while I speak the words. I celebrate this thing called life. I celebrate this opportunity to practice, to be and know and grow and change and explore and express. Because I know as I do that, and as each beloved on this call today does that, each one expresses more of that divine life that they are. Each one gets to experience more of that divine presence that lives in and through them, like a fountain of life. So I celebrate this ability, this opportunity that each one has to be and to experience and to embody this great light that lives within each and all. I bless the gathering today. I bless each one who struggles and succeeds. I bless each one who engages and re-engages again and again and again to experience more of this light of themselves as God, as that divine nature. And I know each continues to have opportunities to practice and to explore and to be and to know. Celebrating this day and blessing its full expression, I see it as good and very good, and I let it be. And so it is.